Sweeney with LiveWell, Colorado. I will be your moderator for today's webinar. I have a few housekeeping items to go over before we get started. First, we will be recording this webinar and it will be available beginning tomorrow morning on the LiveWell Colorado's website. To access the recording, simply visit livewellcolorado.org, click on LiveWell's Commitment tab, click on Research and Publications, and select Webinars. It will also be included in a follow-up email with survey link and other pertinent resources and contact information from this webinar. Second, we will have some time for Q&A at the end of the webinar. If possible, please let us know who your question is directed to and ask it using your on-screen control panel. And now, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Wendy Peters-Muschetti to introduce our speakers.
Good afternoon, everybody. As some of you know who've been on our webinars before, Lisa Walvord, who's the VP of Policy here at LiveWell, typically stands in to facilitate these. She could not be with us today, so this is Wendy. I'm here. I have the pleasure of lightly facilitating this webinar today. So I'm so excited to announce this webinar about creating and enhancing access to healthy food retail in your community, funding opportunities for Colorado. This is actually a webinar that's been in the works for several months. Myself, working with folks here at LiveWell, pretty much as soon as they announced the Colorado Fresh Food Financing Fund, we sort of pounced on those folks and said, oh my gosh, when can we get you on a webinar with some other partners in the state to talk about this exciting new opportunity? I think the registrants today sort of demonstrate the interest in this subject. We had 137 registrants as of this morning. People are obviously very excited and eager to hear about opportunities for healthy retail financing. So we're so pleased to have several presenters on the call today to talk about a very timely and important subject. So as you can see, objectives are we really just want to present some of these varied opportunities for communities of all shapes and sizes across the state to fund and finance healthy food retail. And then also to just sort of increase awareness about how to go about this process, about how to find these opportunities, how to start the application process, and assess if this is really a fit for you and your community. So to get us there, the presentations we'll be going through today will be on the Colorado Fresh Food Financing Fund. We will also hear about innovative financing for healthy food businesses from the Colorado Enterprise Fund. And we will hear about USDA rural development lending and grant opportunities. And then as always, we will end with some time for discussion and Q&A with all of you. So our presenters today are first out of the chute talking about Colorado Fresh Food Financing Fund, will be Erica Heller with FUMA and Tim Dillon with the Colorado Housing and Financing Authority. We will also hear from Steele Prinster with the Colorado Enterprise Fund and Patty Snyder with Colorado USDA Rural Development. So I'd like to introduce our first two speakers in a little bit more depth. To talk about the Colorado Fresh Food Financing Fund, Erica Heller is a senior associate with Progressive Urban Management Associates, PUMA, a consulting firm that provides management, marketing, and financial services to advance downtown and community development. PUMA also serves as a food access organization for CO4F, the Colorado Fresh Food Financing Fund. And they provide marketing, outreach, technical assistance, and eligibility determinations for this program, which you will hear a lot more about. Tim is a senior commercial loan officer with the Colorado Housing and Financing Authority, who will be speaking with Erica about this program. He helps provide financing for affordable multifamily properties and commercial and nonprofit enterprises. He has been active in identifying and developing opportunities to increase access to capital for Colorado businesses, and first became involved in these kind of efforts to increase grocery retail access to underserved areas as a member of the Denver Healthy Food Access Task Force and its financing working group. So Erica and Tim, take it away.
Great, thanks very much, Wendy. This is Erica Heller, and I will start us out. We can do the next slide, please. There's our pictures, and here we go with our first substantive slide. I wanted to start out just by showing how some of the national measures that are out there that map retail food access, how they map in Colorado. And you can see on the key there, that we're looking at 2 measures and then areas where both measures apply. So the darkest blue that you see colored in there is the USDA food deserts. They have multiple measures, and this is a compilation of all of their different measures. And then there's another mapping entity, a national tool called Policy Map that maps limited supermarket access areas. And this second map shows that in the Denver metro area. The first map shows it more on the statewide area. And wanted to show this both to sort of give a sense of where we have food access challenges, that it is a statewide concern, that it happens both in our more urban areas and in our rural areas. And but I also want to mention that the way that both of these tools work is that they use their unit of measure as the census block. And so in some of the areas where census tracts are very large, and excuse me, they use census tracts, that can lead to, they look at average data of both income, folks that are low to moderate income, as well as the distance to a store. And so these are averages for the tracts, and in some cases that means that the retail food access picture is actually much more nuanced than the national tools can reasonably tell us. So I don't want to suggest that these maps show where CO4F is available. We actually look at other information in addition to the national tools. But I did want to show them to just give a sense of the fact that we do have a challenge with retail food access in our state and in different settings within our state. Having covered that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Tim here to talk about the fund a bit, and then I'll provide some other comments after that.
Thanks, Erica. If you could hit the next slide, please. Thanks. This is really just designed. I wanted to start off by giving people a very high-level kind of idea of what the Colorado Fresh Food Financing Fund is all about. Although sometimes I think that the name is very definitive in itself, I did want to give you an idea of what this is actually about. The first bullet point there talks about a public-private partnership. But of course, if you're familiar with Chapter at all, you know that we're actually a quasi-public authority of the state of Colorado. Most of what we do is in the area of affordable housing. However, we do have an economic development mission as well. And so what we also do is manage a bunch of revolving loan funds so that the Colorado Fresh Food Financing Fund is one of those. So we intend to do $20 million in grant and debt financing through loans and grants. In terms of program eligibility, we're looking mostly at food retailers, as you would imagine. And really this is designed to address areas of healthy food access where financing has really been the case for limited access to healthy food retail. Next slide, please. This really just give you an idea of what our goals are. Of course, retail access is really the #1 goal that we're looking at, but we're also looking at economic development as well. As everybody probably knows, grocery stores hire an awful lot of employees, so there's a very strong economic development mission to this as well. Seal is going to talk about the innovative side of things in a little bit, but we also wanted to recognize through this fund that in addition to access to the traditional retail grocery stores that we're all very familiar with, we do recognize that there are some very innovative ways that we can address access to healthy food as well. So really, you know, one of the points I want to make here is that we get an awful lot of questions from various areas on the whole spectrum of healthy food access. And one of the areas that we do hear a lot about is questions regarding what we would call agriculture, growing, and greenhouses, and those types of things that really are not retail aspects. And so, you know, one of the important kind of takeaways of today's seminar, I think, is probably to let you know that what CO4 is all about is really accessing healthy food retail, as opposed to those other really worthwhile things on the food access spectrum, but things that are involved in growing and agriculture and farming and those kinds of things are really not the type of projects that we're trying to hit at this particular point. Let me hit the next slide, please. This is just going to give you a really brief idea of what the partnerships are, and this is really just to underscore the idea that Colorado Fresh Food Financing, from the inception and up to now, has really been a very collaborative effort. CHAFA, of course, is involved from a fund administration standpoint, which is to say that we do the underwriting, we will close and service any loans and or grants that are made, some of which are in the works right now. We have roughly 3 projects in the works right now that we're working through. Some of them, a couple of them are very small. One of them is on the level of a grocery store chain. So we're already starting to look at stuff that's on various aspects in terms of size. Puma, of course, Erica is here as well. They act as our food access organization. They do a lot of the marketing and demographic research for us. And then, of course, Seal, who you'll hear from in a little bit. But I would also put on to this list as well. While these 3 folks here are very closely aligned in terms of having a connection with each other for the Colorado Fresh Food Financing Fund, I would also add on here organizations like LiveWell Colorado that have been very good advocates for us in terms of getting out information and the research that they've done in the area that they can share with us as well as the City and County of Denver through their Office of Economic Development, as well as their Department of Environmental Health, have been very strong advocates. OED, Denver OED has the Fresh program that they work with that is directly aimed at fresh food retail. So we work very closely with them to projects to the extent that they're in the city of Denver. Next slide, please. So this is just going to give you kind of an example of, or a list of some of what we will finance. That's generally the biggest question we have is what exactly can we finance? And the truth of the matter is that it's a fairly broad spectrum of what we can finance, all the way from grocery retail down to more innovative projects, as long as, once again, they're in that retail space and they are providing access to healthy foods. Now, I will caution this. One of the questions we get a lot, or one of the inquiries we get a lot, has to do, once again, with enterprises that might be more interested in organic or locally grown foods. And once again, while we find that incredibly worthwhile and definitely, all part of this sort of healthy food movement, our particular fund is charged with the more narrow scope, which is to provide access to healthy food. So in terms of the examples for the use of financing, what we do, certainly, the big home run, what we want to see and what we will see is the opening of new grocery stores, new construction of new stores. And so, we're already in the talks, have some talks going with that, so we hope that that'll pan out very soon. But in addition to that, we realize that there, we've had discussions with and visits with folks that are looking to reopen former stores that were located in neighborhoods where there really is no access to healthy food now, at least not very close. It's what you would define as a food desert, and so we're looking to potentially be able to use the fund to provide financing to folks that might want to reopen those stores, either as a traditional grocery store or perhaps something a little bit more innovative, like a co-op or something like that. Certainly expand and renovate existing stores. This really helps to sustain stores, particularly in rural communities that might need help expanding or renovating their stores in order to help control their operating costs. Now, while we can provide financing for working capital in inventory, generally, I don't think we're probably going to do that as a standalone project. We're probably going to do that more in conjunction with other uses that are perhaps more real estate centered. However, standalone equipment purchases, we can certainly look at that. Certainly there's a lot of grocery stores out there that are looking to potentially upgrade their equipment or replace their equipment, and we can help with that. The next to the last one there, transfer of ownership, really kind of gets more to reopening existing stores, reopening former stores, or taking over a new store to the extent that we can show that there's some sustainability of things there. Certainly that's an eligible project. And then once again, those innovative types of projects that tend to be smaller in dollar cost in terms of financing, but nevertheless can be very, very worthwhile. One of the points I will make there is that, while we do have some real good flexibility in terms of what we can do with our funds, we still really want to make good deals. So when folks are coming to us seeking either grant or loan financing, we're going to be looking for a really solid project. And we're really going to be looking for for-profit or nonprofit entities that are equipped to take on either the debt or the grant, so have some capacity to be able to do that, and really have some track record behind them of what they're doing. Now, having said that, we certainly do meet with and talk with a lot of folks that have very new ideas. Once again, I think, not necessarily to speak for Erica here, who's really kind of the front door of all of our applications, but we're really willing to look at almost anything. So just kind of send it to us, and we'll take a look at it. Always happy to have the discussion. My philosophy is it's better to kind of look at everything and cull it down rather than to miss something. And I'll take on the next slide, please. So this really kind of drills down a little bit in terms of the eligibility of our fund. Now, given the time here, I'll caution that I'm really just kind of giving you the broad brushstrokes on what we're doing here in terms of the fund. You can get a lot more specific information by locating our program guidelines, which are available on the website, which will be presented at the end of this webinar. But I just did want to give you some information in terms of the eligibility. Erica already spoke a little bit as to the fact that it's a statewide fund. Sometimes access to healthy food is seen as a very urban issue in particular areas. But when we were putting together the fund, Puma did some research for us, and we did determine that there are certainly areas of Colorado, rural areas of Colorado, that have some very strong need as well. And actually, we are looking at some deals in rural Colorado that sort of bear this out. We do want to serve primarily low to moderate income areas, as defined normally by census information. And really, this is this gets to the fact that generally where we see the need for healthy food access is in areas that tend to be low to moderate income neighborhoods, where they're just not getting the sort of financing that they need to be able to address the issue. So what do we define as an underserved area? There's a lot of different methods to do that. There's a lot of different kind of definitions. We use one that I think is probably pretty standard, which we defined when we were putting the fund together. It really looks like below average supermarket density is defined by some of the maps and some of the tools that Erica described earlier. We're also going to be looking at census data and all those kinds of things. One of the things I will caution here is that unlike perhaps some other programs, we do have some flexibility in terms of what we can look at. Some programs like new market tax credits or some other programs like that are very definitive in the areas that you can work in. I think we have a little bit more flexibility, which is to say that if we're looking at a project that isn't necessarily in a food desert, but it's perhaps very close or adjacent to a food desert, then that probably meets our needs a little bit. So I'm just going to go ahead and leave it at that in deference to time and pass it on to Erica.
Great, and I will make one comment about eligibility and Tim's invitation to send all items. We didn't put a lot about the process of applying in this slideshow, but we do have, we're always available to chat on the phone and answer questions. We also do have a pre-application process that is the formal way to test whether a project is eligible with the CO4F eligibility guidelines. It's a page and a half. So we have a lot of ways to quickly gauge the fit of a potential project, and we're always happy to do that, as Tim had said. I will talk briefly about our grants because that is of great interest to many parties. The fund overall is a loan fund. However, we do have a pool that is eligible to be used as grants. It is certainly less than the total capitalization. It's somewhere between 10 and 15% of our capitalization. But it is of great interest. We do the grants in two ways. One is that we can do a gap grant where we fill the difference between the project need for an eligible project and the realistic debt carrying capacity of that enterprise, and that those are definitely smaller, and they come alongside a loan. Our other pool of grants is for the innovative food retailing models, and here we're looking to find projects that are taking a different kind of tack at retail food access and potentially could be a replicable new model that would be used in other similar areas. There's a smaller maximum cap in terms of total cost, but a higher percentage of the cost that we can support. And let's go to the next slide. This is just a program snapshot of where we are about 9 months into, actually 7 months into program implementation. We've been doing a lot of statewide marketing through a variety of channels and generated over 100 borrower inquiries. We get other inquiries about informational inquiries, but specifically to the pipeline, we've had more than 100 inquiries, and of those we've generated 28 pre-applications, those eligibility determinations I mentioned. We are getting a nice mix from across the state, and while 60% of those are sort of in the greater metro Denver area, we are seeing them from other areas of the state pretty strongly, so that's great since we have every intention of serving the entire state. And 22 of those pre-applications did meet the eligibility criteria, and then as Tim alluded to, and Phil will probably talk more about, from that point forward, one or the other organization, either CHAPA or Colorado Enterprise Fund, then invites a full application and hopefully receives one. So 5 of those applications have been submitted to CHAPA already, and one major grant was approved to CEF early on so that we could partner with CEF. Again, that's Colorado Enterprise Fund. 2 applications have been approved by our loan committee and are pending closure. And actually, Tim is gesturing here to me. Actually, we have since received a 6th complete application. So 3 are actually in review and processing. So that's your up-to-the-minute report. And I just spoke with our the loan officer over at CEF, who informed me that they are in process also with likely CO4F deals. 2 submitted applications that they're working on. They certainly, so there are other folks that both entities are working on, working with to complete their applications, assisting them, and that have been invited to submit applications, but that's the number that have actually turned that around and made the submittal. So, and we are seeing that, and Tim made some mention of this, many of the early deals are those smaller in size in terms of dollars, things that are expanding a store, changing over inventory, trying new innovative concepts. So they're smaller deals, but we are working with folks where we have every reason to think that we will have some brand new store deals that will certainly apply to the fund. So we're looking forward to that. Next slide. I did want to mention that, as Tim mentioned, the applicants to the fund are the actual enterprises that are going to create the retail food access. But knowing that this audience has a lot of other folks with interest in this area, I wanted to mention the roles that we see for folks in supporting this fund, supporting communities to take advantage of it, and supporting enterprises to start. So those roles kind of go in 3 buckets. One is just helping to pass the information along. As you know, for communities and local governments, as applicants might come into the permit counter, making sure that they know that this exists, and potentially reaching out to existing enterprises that might want to take advantage of the fund. There's some proactive things communities can do to help the enterprises understand what market potential there is, and to help clear any hurdles that might exist. And last but not least, we would love to leverage monies into the projects that would come from local sources, so be it large or small. A little bit of website information. Please feel free to contact us. A lot of great detailed information is available on that CO4F site,
as well as pre-applications and program guidelines, as I mentioned earlier.
Yeah. And that's it. Our last slide, there's contact information for Tim and myself.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to both of you. We already have a couple of questions rolling in, most of which we'll save for the end. But just a real quick clarification, Tim, if you could, back to your financing slide on the uses of financing. There was a question, if you could just further define and give some examples of what you mean by working capital.
Sure. So working capital is really something that a store might need in order to finance inventory, or any business for that matter might need to finance inventory or other overheads such as payroll or those kinds of things. It's really, you know, a grocery store tends to have a very short, not to get too much into the finance aspect of things, but grocery stores tend to have, you know, a fairly short operating cycle, so that they generate a lot of working capital. But there are other enterprises that have longer operating cycles, and so they need more working capital. Once again, I would say that, you know, to the extent that a business might need working capital, you know, which might then be secured by some other assets in the business, it's probably going to be small, and it's going to be really just one use of those particular, of an overall financing package. We did think it was important to put it in there as an eligible use. However, it's probably, you know, we're probably looking to do things that are more either equipment or real estate based in terms of you know, in terms of expanding retail. Hope that answers the question.
Very extensively, thank you. Okay, so next up we have Ceal Prinster. She is the president and CEO of the Colorado Enterprise Fund, CEF, which is a nonprofit community development financial institution, otherwise known as a CDFI. They provide loans and support for small businesses who are unable to obtain traditional financing. Prior to joining CEF over 25 years ago, Ceal was a commercial lending and training officer at United Bank of Denver, which is now Wells Fargo. And she is also a founding member of the Denver Sustainable Food Policy Council. So thank you, Ceal.
Yes, thank you, Wendy. It's really a pleasure to be here today and to tell you about both Colorado Enterprise Fund and our Healthy Foods Fund program. So going to the next slide, I'll start by telling you about CEF and then how that feeds into our Healthy Foods Fund, and then I'll give you some examples of some loans that we've approved along the way. So who we are and what we do. As Wendy mentioned, we are a CDFI, or Community Development Financial Institution, which is really a nonprofit lending source. We've been around since 1976, serving small businesses across the state of Colorado. We are a standalone nonprofit, and we get our funding from banks and various government entities and nonprofit foundations and other types of organizations and some corporations. And really what we do is we provide access to capital for small businesses, and we support those businesses by providing business acceleration services, which is sometimes called technical assistance. And we do that at very minimal cost or no cost, and the purpose of that is to really help them to build their capacity as a business owner to ensure their success and to ensure that their business will be a long-term going concern. So our organization, as I mentioned, is a nonprofit CDFI. Probably the main things from here is we've been around for over 35 years. We've grown along the way, and you kind of see some of the metrics of where we're at right now. But because we are mission-driven, we really are very concerned about our impact in the community. We want to help entrepreneurs. We want to help communities. We want to help the economy in our state. And we do that through a strategy that involves providing access to capital to businesses that can't otherwise get it. We make loans from $1,000 to $250,000, and we currently have over 400 loans under management in our portfolio. So here it gives you a little flavor, to use a pertinent word for our discussion, of our borrowers. We have many, many that we've loaned to, over 1,600 throughout the years. But restaurants, I won't read them all, but you see down there retail stores, some of which along the way have been grocery stores. Manufacturing, some of which have been food products. Various other service types of businesses, and various industries. So we do track how many of our loans are to early stage companies. We like to serve populations that have historically had a difficult time accessing capital, including women-owned businesses and minority-owned businesses, but we are not exclusive to those populations. So as being a CDFI, we are very in tune with national initiatives that are going on in our field, and one of the things that has been really percolating for the last few years is healthy foods financing. And because there was so much also going on in Colorado, because we've seen businesses in our just normal business lending that have been food-oriented, and because of my involvement with the Denver Food Policy Council, we felt that it was important for us to identify healthy food financing as a target market for our loan program. So our Healthy Foods Fund we are a partner with CO4F, as you have heard, and we also have some other national partners. So there is an overlap with CO4F in the sense of we have received some funding from CO4F, very gratefully, and we also have additional funding that we are bringing to the table that allows us to have the ability to do some other things that that money enables us to do. So the purpose of our fund is twofold. One is to ensure that there is access to fresh, nutritious, and affordable food throughout the state, and to do our part that makes sense within our business model of smaller loans. And that's really about grocery retail access, as Tim and Erica were talking about. But the other part that we think is also very important is to foster a vibrant local food economy. Local food and buying local movements are very, very big here in Colorado, as you know, and we feel that supporting businesses in all segments of the food system is really a critical part of our economy. The food industry is very central to Colorado. It always has been historically, and that the smaller businesses are really a key part of our Colorado economy. 87% of all businesses in Colorado have 20 or fewer employees, and that is true also for food businesses. So what does our program look like, our Healthy Foods program? We are really trying to offer affordable financing statewide. We are only a loan program. We are making loans up to $250,000. Any type of business is eligible to apply generally to our overall business loan program, which really can encompass a lot of different types of businesses that may or may not be put into our Healthy Foods Fund. And so what we try to do is really serve the small businesses that are going to be run by entrepreneurs and business owners that may have a food focus for their business, and to really help them to access capital and help them to build their capacity. So everybody always asks about rates. That's going to vary depending on the loan size and the credit history and the use of funds, because these businesses are much smaller. It depends on the length of the loan and the credit history of the business owner and some of those things. But generally, we are able to make loans because of our relationship with CO4F. There are special interest rates for grocery outlets that are serving lower income populations and limited food access areas. So those would be the ones that, again, would be eligible for CO4F, that we were able to have a lower rate, down as low as possibly 2%. Other businesses that don't fit in that category can still obtain financing depending on all those factors, rates and or the loan size, credit history, and use of funds, and other things. They may have a higher rate up to possibly 11 or 12%. We do also provide the technical assistance, which is very helpful for business owners that are wearing so many hats and need to learn how to be a good manager and juggle all the balls. But our goal is to provide the flexible, patient, and generally affordable capital for businesses. So the typical uses of Healthy Foods funding, businesses can be used, or the loans can be used for that working capital that Tim was talking about. We're going to be doing the smaller requests, so a lot of times that's what we see in smaller businesses is the need for that. Inventory and equipment are both eligible uses. People need to purchase inventory to get going and maybe growing and need some new equipment. In Healthy Foods, there may be refrigerators or coolers or point-of-sale types of equipment that will make that business more efficient and more sustainable. Property improvements, when there's a leased space situation, business owner may need to retrofit some things or rearrange that layout to be more inviting to customers and so forth. Again, purchasing a business, this would be on the smaller scale of what Tim was also talking about. So you're seeing some overlap in the types of uses of our funds, and that's really intended to be that way because we are on a partnering relationship with CO4F for many of these types of projects. Energy efficiency upgrades, we put that out on there because that retail food grocery stores do use a lot of energy with all the cooling, and they're open so many hours, and so to the extent that they can improve their energy usage, then they will be a more sustainable business and be able to serve their community much better in the long term. So what are the types of businesses that we would be looking at in this Healthy Foods arena? So here's a list. The retail grocery outlets, there's all sorts of those, and we are the partner that's going to be more able to do the more innovative and unusual and non-traditional types of delivery for retail grocery. You see the different types of packaging or processing or manufacturing. Food production is something we would be very interested in. Urban agriculture, all aspects of the food system in both rural and urban areas that we serve. So let me just give you a couple of examples, and then we'll wrap up here. We have approved, we do have a grocery store that we've been working with in northern Colorado. We haven't closed that loan, so I need to kind of hold off on telling who that business is, but it is a new store. They are very oriented to high-quality, organic, and locally sourced fresh food. They do also provide packaged food, and a person could go there and do their grocery shopping and go home and be done. They take SNAP benefits. They also provide some education in the space that they have in the store, and to teach people really about healthy eating and the types of products that they sell. Next, one of our goals, again, is to foster a vibrant local food economy. So there are some food system loans I'm going to just put up here for real quickly. One of them is Source Local Foods is a borrower of ours, and that business is a distributor that's really tried to connect farmers to new markets that they may be able to access with proper distribution channels. And this is not only produce, but meats and cheeses and other dairy products and various other food products. Another example is a food manufacturing business. This is value-added food product business that is actually sold in Whole Foods. We have another one called Sophie's Armenian Yogurt Dip that's in a similar category, and it's all natural. They use local source food, locally produced ingredients, and it's providing new products that are healthier and also encourage the economy by purchasing locally. So if you have any questions, we're here to help, and you can see our website there. Please go to our website and look for the application is online for our program, and we also would welcome you to call us. You can reach us also through CO4F. We have a very active referral back and forth with CO4F because we are partners there as well. So I think that's it for now, and turn it back over.
Thanks, Seal. And just before we move to the next speaker, Patty Snido, one question that we came in that I can go back to the others for, but Patty, as you talk about small businesses, if you could describe how you define small businesses by annual gross sales, that would be helpful, and we can ask that question back of presenters later as well. So without further ado, our last and lovely speaker, Patty Snido, is an area director with the Colorado State Office of USDA's Rural Development. She is also the Community and Economic Development Director. So, Patty, it is your turn.
Hi, thank you for the invitation. In a matter for timing, I was going to speak for 10 minutes, but it looks like I've got 6. Do you want me to cut?
I'd like you to take 8, if possible.
Okay, all right, that's what all right. Thank you for the invitation to be here, and sorry for that logistical interruption. I just didn't want to cut into the questions. I'm with USDA Rural Development. The first slide discusses that and gives the name of our agency. We're a very small division of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. The next slide discusses our mission, and our focus is in rural America, and for me it's in rural Colorado. And our mission you can read there, but really we focus on economic development and community development. And a lot of programs are funneled through our agency that are focused for these particular purposes. We have about 42 different programs, but for this particular effort I'm going to talk about programs that are focused on small business, and that would include your retail food division. Next slide shows that our offices, where our offices are located. You can access any of our programs through any of our offices. We may not have a specialist in that office, but they can definitely get you that information and get you to the right person that can give you all the information. And our state office is at the Denver Federal Center in Lakewood. Next slide. One of the programs I'll touch on very briefly is our Rural Development Business and Industry Loan Guarantee Loan and Guarantee Program, and that's through your local bank. And that's where we guarantee the bank for a small business. Most of the programs that we have and the programs I'm going to be discussing today are all for populations less than 50,000, and that's because we have a focus in rural. Generally, these are general rates and terms, and so regular rates and terms are based on market and the prime and your bank that's negotiated with the bank. So usually people are on these phone lines because they can't access that kind of funding. So we'll go to the next slide. And that is about our revolving loan funds. Now, we actually fund other entities to create revolving loan funds, and we put quite a bit of money into these efforts, and then they are lent out directly to the businesses. So these revolving loan fund programs, the businesses don't access them directly, but we fund an intermediary or an entity that then creates that a revolving loan fund. For instance, Chappa has one of our revolving loan funds. Colorado Lending Source has a revolving loan fund. Your council governments many times, like Region 9, they have a revolving loan fund under us. And we fund them, and then they fund you. And what that does is it makes it a little easier for you. You're not dealing with the federal government. You're not dealing with our criteria. These people are dealing with the federal government and our criteria and our paperwork, and they can make it a little easier for you to access. And all of these programs that I have listed here, although each of them are a bit different, they all are intended to assist projects that can't access financing through regular terms, meaning through their local bank. Quickly, the Rural Business Enterprise Grant is a very small capital funding program. We use that for a variety of purposes, but one of those is to seed, meaning to start up a very small revolving loan fund. So the city of Montrose has a revolving loan fund to assist their downtown. The town of Lyons has a revolving loan fund to assist their businesses. These are generally, the whole fund might be $30,000 to $50,000. It's more for micro lending, and it works really well for that. And I'll say also, all of the entities that we fund for revolving loans, they determine their criteria, how they're going to use the money. So they might, Montrose says we're going to use ours just to focus on our downtown and our small businesses. I believe Lyons is focusing in all the businesses in their area. So they create those rates and terms. They create their lending criteria, and we just confirm that they stay with the criteria that they've established. On the intermediary relending program, that is a bigger pot of money. Once they have a track record of lending money, the intermediary relending program can get them significantly more money, and those are the bigger funds that Chappa and Colorado Lending Source and Region 9 have to lend out. The third one is the Rural Economic Development Loan and Grant Program, and this is a highly underutilized program in Colorado. This funding is very exclusively available to your rural electric cooperative. That's your electric company in rural Colorado, and only they can access this funding. And they can access, and it's all for lending out for the purpose of economic development. So they can get a grant from us for about $350,000, and they can get a direct loan from us for about $750,000, and then they re-lend that out to an entity or a project that's going in their area. The loan that we give them is 0%, so they can lots of times lend it out at 1 or 2%. And so that gives really good rates and terms to a project in a local community. An example of that is the Walsh store, the Walsh grocery store. In 2008, they were lent $160,000 through this program, and that came through Southeast Colorado Power Association. So people don't think about their rural electric as being able to access revolving loan funds, but they actually are. You asked me to define small business, and there is no specific across-the-board definition of small business, and I wish I could say that it was. But the SBA has on the SBA.gov website, they have a size chart for small businesses, and actually each small business is compared to another small business exactly like it. So a McDonald's franchise is compared to a McDonald's franchise in revenue and in number of employees. And a car dealership is done the same way, revenue and number of employees. So there isn't a one-size-fits-all because obviously the gross revenues of a car dealership would be very different than a McDonald's, and it wouldn't be appropriate to compare them. Lots of times, for instance, a franchise franchise might be a small business, but once the entity gets up to where an owner has 3 or 4 or 5 franchises, they're no longer considered a small business. And for instance, Vail is not considered a small business, Vail Corporation. However, Powderhorn Ski Resort, Sunlight Ski Resort, Purgatory Ski Resort, those are all small businesses. So it's all relevant to the industry that they're in, and that's determined by going onto the SBA.gov website and also looking at the tax returns. And when the accountant does the tax returns, right up at the top of the sheet where you do their name and address, over to the one side there is a box that has an NAICS code. It's called a NAICS code, and that's North American Industrial Classification System. And it's under that number, however their accountant has classified their business, that they would fit into that SBA size chart. And you can get that size chart, look it up, and that's pretty straightforward. The next slide is on our rural energy program for rural America. Next slide. And the eligibility for that, now this is a direct program where we do work directly with small businesses and directly with agriculture producers. And the eligibility for this program is they're under a population of 50,000 and SBA size standards meet SBA size standards for a small business or an agriculture producer. Definition of an agriculture producer in this particular program is you produce 51% of your household income through agriculture production. If your business or your ag production does not fit that 51% of your household income, maybe you have outside jobs, you can just come in as a small business. That's not a problem. The next slide talks generally about the grant is 25% of the cost of purchase and the installation of equipment on commercial buildings, and it's also for improving the shell of an existing commercial building. So that includes HVAC, windows, insulation, all kinds of things that would create energy efficiency in that building. And we can also do things like put solar panels and that type of thing on a building. The grant amount on this is on energy efficiency. We can go up to a grant of $250,000, which would be $1 million project. And the renewable energy system, meaning a geothermal system or a solar panels or hydroelectric, the maximum grant is $500,000, which takes it up to $2 million. And then our guaranteed loan program, which can be paired with this, can actually do a loan guarantee of up to $25 million. So if you're doing a really big project, that's something that we can handle under that program, as well as under our business and industry loan guarantee program. And then the last slide is my contact information. So you're welcome to contact me at any time, and I'm happy to get you to whoever you need or answer your questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Patty, for joining us on the road and for flying through all that great information. So, and we just got a note come in here from a LiveWell community coordinator. This is, they also have a revolving loan fund for half of Garfield County. So yay, and thank you, Rural Development. So we're going to opening up to questions. So we already have several, but please, if you do have questions, please type them in right now. We'll try to get through as many as we can. So we had a couple questions, I think, actually all four really of our presenters can address, but I'm going to start, Tim and Erica, with you. A couple questions about, again, sort of eligibility of projects around if there's a food retail component associated with a farm stand or a CSA program. Also, somewhat related to that is if there's a farmer's market, but that also carries other products for retail. Are these kinds of projects that may be eligible for CO4F funding?
Yeah, that's a great question. This is Tim. And so the short answer is yes. And you know, when I was talking earlier about some of those projects that came in that are more, you know, agriculture and growing and farming and nature and so forth, what we did tell them was that if and when, you know, you put together a retail aspect to those particular endeavors, then, you know, we'd be happy to take a look at it. Now, what that would mean is that we would be, our financing would be limited to the retail part of that, you know, of that project. So, you know, just, you know, not to put too fine a point on it, but just by example, you know, let's say it was, you know, some sort of greenhouse growing operation, and there was you know, and it was urban in nature, and you could demonstrate that you were serving an underserved area, by definition of what we talked about earlier, and there was some retail component to that, then yes, that would apply, or that would be eligible for CO4F funds. Now, just kind of thinking it through in this particular case, that my guess is that might be something that's probably going to be better suited for CEF, just because those are probably going to be things that are going to be sort of smaller in dollar value, except to the extent that they're applying perhaps for a grant, in which case it would be CO4F. And I think the other part of the question there was, what was the other part of the question? Well, sorry, Wendy, what was the other part of the question?
Yeah, for farmers markets that have other products, so there's more diverse retailing.
Oh, right. So I think they, I think, once again, I think the short answer is yes. I think what you need to demonstrate there is that, is that there is a very, well-defined effort to make healthy food available in an underserved area. Now, to the extent that there are other products offered as well, as they often are in a farmer's market, we don't necessarily have any problem with that. Just like in a grocery store or some other retail, some retail store, small store, obviously they're going to have other products that are available to the consumers as well that aren't perhaps even food related. If you look at our guidelines, we have some fairly strict definitions of what actually has to have a food component, in terms of the area of a particular store. I think that would probably apply to a farmer's market as well. As long as 50. And I don't have I don't have the guidelines in front of me. I'm sorry, but as long as it was meeting the guidelines, I think that's probably a pretty good litmus test for that.
Great. Thanks, Tim. I know Steele has some comments as well.
Just real quickly, our fund would not, or would finance those businesses, and even without the retail component as a food system loan. And we would also encourage the retail outlet aspect of it. It just is for us internally. As Patty was mentioning, we have various sources of funding, and we figure all that out on our end. And we have a number of sources of funding that, including CO4F as well as our federal government funding, that we can make deals happen. So.
And then Patty, did you have anything to add to this line of questions? I just kind of trying to
unmute. No, I don't. I think everybody did a really good job, and yeah, I think it's for us, for the revolving loan fund, it's about what the criteria is written as. Business and industry loan program, we do all sorts of businesses. It's not exclusive, so we can do operating and things like that. So it would depend on the business model.
No, great. That's helpful. Thanks, Patty. So another question about sort of how, for both directed to CEF and CO4F, but Patty, you may want to chime in here as well, but sort of looking at how you sort of look at and assess established practices and businesses, and the question is specifically about what about groups that are working in partnership with, say, new immigrant communities, and how would you sort of assess new groups like that, against, as an established practice business when they're applying for a loan or a grant? So, Steele, do you want to start with that?
There needs to be an entity that borrows. So if the groups are working together collaboratively, that's great, but somebody has to sign the loan documents. And a lot of times there are collaborative projects like us and LiveWell and CO4F, but you have to pick one entity that's going to be the borrower. And so that's what we have to work through, I think, if I understand the question correctly.
Yeah, I think so. And Tim and Erica, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I would just echo what Steele said. I mean, it's really going to just get down to the kind of basics of the underwriting and structuring, which is, as Steele indicated, you really need you need an individual or an entity there that is that has the ability to has the authority to incur debt. So when you apply to us, you're going to want to apply with some sort of structure in mind. It doesn't necessarily have to be formalized and in place when you apply, but having an entity, I mean, typically what we're going to look at is it's going to be either some for-profit or non-profit business. And so what that means is it's probably going to look like, typically for a small business, it looks like either, a S corporation or a C corporation or a limited liability corporation. And in terms of nonprofits, it typically looks like a 50c3 organization. Not that that is exclusive, but.
This is Patty. I would add, when you're doing a revolving loan fund, there's probably a lot more flexibility. If you're coming directly to us through our business and industry program or any of our other direct programs, if you're a nonprofit, I didn't even talk about our community facilities program, but we have a direct loan program there too. And if it's a new project or a new effort, then we do require a full feasibility study, and that's probably why you want to go through a revolving loan fund if you can. But we would require on a new effort a full feasibility study, and we also require that it be a full organization, a 501c3. It can also be a cooperative. And the cooperative, a lot of times people think of a co-op as people working together, and it is that, but it also is a formal organization, and those are the only entities that are eligible to apply. We don't lend or do grant, or we don't do lending to individuals on this level.
That was very helpful. And the woman who asked this question says thank you, everybody. I know we're at past 2 o'clock. I'm going to add one more question in here, and then I have a couple just brief updates, logistics. So if you can stay on the line, that's great. I understand if you can't. So one last question from the audience is, I'll put this to you, Seal. Are the CO4F and CEF loans, are they mutually exclusive, or can projects apply to potentially receive funds from each of them?
No, the answer is no, that they are not mutually exclusive, and yes, a project could potentially receive funds from both. We wanted to set this up so that we were partnering and that there was a seamless and collaborative way to serve our communities, and so that's why CEF is taking some of the smaller deals that can just be a little bit more streamlined for a smaller business. But we can also partner on a larger project and bring in additional funding, or if there's funding that we have that's a little more flexible and outside the mission of CO4F to bring into a project, we can also do that. So we totally envisioned being partners on some deals and being complementary on other projects.
Great, thank you. And for Patty and Tim and Erica, who cannot see this, I just want to share a comment that just came in that says, I cannot thank all of you enough for this webinar. So thank you to all of our speakers. And just a couple of logistics before we sign off. Thank you to our speakers. Thank you for all of our attendees and participants and the great questions. Things I should have mentioned at the very beginning. The last couple of slides here we did provide all speaker contacts again, as well as the link to where the webinar will be archived on the website. All registrants of this webinar will receive the slides probably sometime tomorrow or Monday. All registrants will receive a follow-up email with the slides and a link to the LiveWell website where all of our webinars are archived, so anyone can go and listen to them and hear it all over again. So please share that with any of your colleagues that may be interested. Also, I should say that this was our 15th food systems webinar in a row. And some of you who are on the line actually may have recently participated in a survey we did of webinar attendees over the past 15 months. Thank you if you did participate in that survey. We received some very good feedback. And we are going to take a little break from the Food Systems webinar series. We're going to take a little time to digest the feedback we've received about kind of future topics and strategies and how we kind of want to hone in and focus tools like this webinar that we use to showcase all sorts of work going on around the state to strengthen access to healthy foods in Colorado. So we do not have a 16th webinar planned or announced yet. The summer is also a very good time to take a break from these sorts of activities since we're all very busy. But stay tuned. We will be in touch. And, of course, all 15 of the Food Systems webinars are all archived on the website, so you can watch them over and over and over again as much as you like. So thank you all for your time. Thanks to our speakers, and have a great